G'day everyone and welcome to the newest show on your TV screens. It is the selection table. I am your host, Pommy and Oz. There is a fourth member of the selection committee, but because it is a Carlton show and it is always disorganised, he's running late. So we've really added the replication of the selection table. To my left is the legend that is Lekdog, the guy that is the Tony Lockett of Supercoach. And below me is Ian. You'll know him from the Navy Blue Corner podcast. He's probably got the smoothest voice in video entertainment, but also he's our own regular John Lennon. Good day, lads. How are we doing?
Thanks for having us, Pommy. Very excited.
Pleasure to be here. Very exciting stuff.
Well, it's obviously something that we talk about a lot is the selection, isn't it? And it's something that probably we're all guilty of it on Twitter. Wednesday afternoon, we post our 22 and open ourselves up to the criticism of the world. I thought this show here is going to be basically doing that, but as a discussion, so we can kind of get into the mind of how hard it is to pick a 22 when there's more than one person picking it. So, Lekdog, are you excited? And just talk to me how you've approached your team selection this week.
It's interesting, Paul, because obviously we do the team stream every week and we talk about the ins and outs and we try and project at the start of that who might come out. And most of the time we miss one or two. So it's actually really difficult. That was probably the most surprising thing for me, actually sitting down and going, all right, this guy's underperformed. I'm pissed off at this guy. I'm going to axe them all. And then you look and you go, oh, you've actually got to replace guys as well. You can't just sack them forever and not replace them. So it's actually a little bit difficult, and I probably didn't have that many wholesale changes to my side. I tried to be realistic. I tried to look at guys who have a bulk of form in the reserves or who are just walk-in starts to the team, even if they haven't played reserves. So that was my focus. I tried to be really realistic about how I think the team's going to structure up, and we can go into the details later, but I thought we were too slow and probably one too many tools. So people in the comments, you can project ahead at who I might have axed based on that.
Oh, well, I love it. Ian, what about you? How are you approaching this as a selector? What are you looking for and how are you selecting your team?
Yeah, I guess I'm pretty similar to Lekdog there, where at the start I sort of went in with who am I nailed on and getting that structure right to start with. And I'll be honest, after last week, there wasn't a lot of guys left at that stage. And it was kind of very similar where a lot of guys I wanted to just get rid of, but it is hard because you have to still fill those positions. You have to find guys to play those roles. And so, yeah, it was a bit of a harder one this week, but that's why we're here to make these tough decisions and try to see what players you think can best suit things and any deficiencies we saw on the weekend and anything we saw that caught our eye in the VFL, who's in, who's out. And yeah, it's interesting when you put it on paper and try to actually figure it out. It's definitely a lot more difficult than one would imagine.
It is very tough, and joining us traditionally late, so he's thrown a curveball. He's been legit, but ladies and gentlemen, SEN zone, blue abroad zone, jumper punches on, probably the finest thing to be exported out of Italy since Monica Bellucci. Paolo, what are we doing?
Very well, very, very well. Yeah, just come back from the studio. Just recorded a few things with one of the great men over there, Nick Negropontis. So little Carlton thing we were putting together. So. Yeah, it's I'm all Carltoned out tonight, which is I don't know if it's great or if it's bad because it's been a pretty stressful weekend following our boys, but we're here to try and alleviate some concerns, I think, within the fan base, which would be nice.
Mate, Spawn and Paolo, the same question I asked the boys. How have you approached your team selection? What are you looking for? How are you picking it? Give us a little indication of what goes on in the mind of Paolo.
Make a statement, set a standard. Basically, it was, for lack of a better phrase, it was pretty pitiful last week, I think. They were absolutely horrible. And I think maybe a senior name or two needs to be... Hold on a moment. I think we've just...
I can hear you.
Hold on.
I can hear him as well.
My laptop's just shit itself. Hold on, wait. It's just, I think, can you hear me? Can you see me?
We can hear you. We can't see you.
Okay. All right. I think my laptop's just shit itself. But yeah, when you can see me, I think they need to make a statement. I think Zach Fisher's been down, and I think maybe one of those two younger kids might need a rest. Maybe Lockie Cowan just to bring someone in like maybe a Kev. Just start rewarding some of the VFL form, which I think deserves to be rewarded this season.
I think the other thing that I didn't really consider before doing this task is there's some guys, and I'm sure we'll disagree on this, there's some guys where I looked at and I was like, what's the actual point of elevating you? And there's other guys I looked at in the senior team, like, what's the actual point of omitting you? Like, in the real world, the club's not going to do it. So that impacted a little bit on some of my decisions. There's some guys who I kept in the team, some guys who I dropped, who I didn't elevate, probably because it's not going to happen in real life. So I tried to be as realistic as possible, but I'm sure as this series goes on, I'll start just culling 10 blokes at once and we'll have real fun with it.
I think you summed it up well there, Lekdog. I think we have this thing in our mind that after one horrible performance like we saw, that you want to, make 5, 6, 7 changes based on form, but you know that's not going to happen. You just know it.
Yeah.
I agree with you. So for those watching at home, just to answer the question I asked everyone else, my approach is I'm going for people who are 100% fit. I'm a firm believer that it's round 6. Don't take any risks. Try and bring in like for like if I can, and try and sprinkle some things that's missing if I can find it in VFL. So that being said, for those watching at home, what we're going to do, there's structure to this, because unlike our football club, I live in structure. So we're going to discuss the back line, the midfield and followers, the forwards. We're going to present our case to you. You guys are the 5th member of the committee. You're Michael Voss. And you're going to, at the end of each section, say which one you like, if it's Paolo's, Lekdog's, mine, or Ian's. And then that will make up the final team. And we'll have an interesting discussion about the extended bench we've also done. So first things first, when you're picking a team, is you look at the miscreants that played last week, as I think Paolo's reset his computer. So we'll go through this. This was the team as it was named. So no one say to me, Pomhead Colonel's centre-half forward. I'm well aware. But they are the team. So initially chat, and we'll start with Lekdog. We'll go up to Dan. Lekdog, what do you think was missing, and who do you think of their names? It's got a bit of squeaky bum time.
It's an interesting one. I think we talked about this on the Teams stream last week. I was concerned about, I'll just say it. I don't think if we've got Kennedy, Hewitt, and Cripps available, that Ed Curnow needs to be in the team. I'm worried about that in terms of speed. I worry about the reliance on going, we're getting smashed, just put him in the forward line. Put him in the midfield. What does everyone else do? So I thought we went in a bit slow. And as you and I have discussed many times this year, Pom, I feel like we're always playing with one too many talls. So I was a little concerned about how we went in. I want Tom De Koning and Pitnet to split the ruck. I want Tom De Koning, though, to be majority forward. And there's probably not enough room for him and Pito and Charlie and Harry and Jack Silvani and all these other guys. So, yeah, I was a little worried about how tall we were, and I was a little worried about how slow we looked. And I think, I don't know if a couple of changes there would have stopped it, but we got absolutely blitzed in that game, and we just could never recover.
Well, Harry was so obsolete last week, I do apologise. Mackay should be in there. I put Matt Motlop in there twice. That's maybe a grudge that I bear because he missed in front of the goal. So maybe subconsciously. Thank you for pointing that out, Christian. Ian, same question to you. When you look at this team and what you saw last week, when you were making up this 22, what were you thinking? Which of these guys is under a bit of the cosh?
Yeah, look, I think Lekdog, again, looks like we're going to agree a little bit to start off with, but I think the midfield, there was too many of the same bunch, which is so obvious now looking at what happened from that game. And then what else kind of surprised me a little bit is that we didn't really replace, I guess, like for Doherty coming out of the team. We sort of went with the mid-rotation of a Chera and eventually a Matt Kennedy down there. And for me, I like structure and I like keeping to a system. And if we have a player out, bring someone in that kind of fits that role a little bit more. And it just taking away that outside player of a Chera to put him down half back as that rotation, it just wasn't really it for me. So yeah, and then looking at, I guess, other people that maybe are on the chopping block, like I guess the half forwards, there is a big question mark there about what we're going to do with a few of those boys. I think there are going to be some big questions asked and hopefully answered by the end of this one.
Obviously,
And
Gov
Paolo-
laid out as well didn't help.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
It did. And Paolo, what were you looking at? Who do you think, when you were picking your team, you were like, you know what? I think your time is done.
Look, it's as much as we don't want to make him the scapegoat. It's just Lockie Plowman just doesn't give us anything really. I mean, and as a backline as well, our biggest weakness, I think, is rebounding the ball off half back when McGovern and Saar don't have the ball. Those defenders actually wanting to get on the front foot and wanting to move the ball and looking dangerous with ball in hand, and Plowman just can't do that. And then he decided he'd also get outmarked by Rory Sloane. So I think that's pretty much it for Lockie Plowman, I would have thought. And I also think I have grave concerns for Zach Fisher's spot in the lineup as well. He has been is abysmal.
Not very good.
Is abysmal kind enough for what we've seen from him this year. He was shocking on Thursday night. Terrible. And I think you and I were having this chat as well, Pommy. What's his role in the team? I actually don't know what he's supposed to do.
Well, I mean, at the moment, I think it's to do an impression of a kid in a shopping centre looking for his ma.
But at least the kid knows what he has to do. He has to find his mum.
Well, I mean, at the moment, he's found someone else's mum and gone home with her.
I don't know what's going on with him. Yeah.
Paolo, you just touched on something which I'm big on in team selection, team structure. If I don't know what you do, I don't think you should be in our team. We've got a few players like that. Fish is one of them. There's a lot of guys after 100 games of Fish in 7 years, 6 years, however long he's been on the list. What are you? Like, I don't know, which is an issue for me. So, yeah, I think when we get to the forwards, there's going to be some consensus there, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think when I looked at it, I was looking for, there's a few players that are underdone. And I think my biggest concern with this side is endeavour, people to take the game on.
100%. 100%.
I felt last week a lot of players were playing safe within themselves.
Yep.
And I was looking at who can I bring in that's maybe going to put a rocket up your ass. And I think Zach Fisher suffers from not having anyone coming in. I think Zach Fisher knows they need a smaller guy with a little bit of flair. And he watches Josh Honey next to him and goes, Josh Honey's cooked. I've got this in the bag. So I tried to think, who can I bring in or set a little bit of a standard to say, gentlemen, you don't get a position in this team for mediocre. You've got to put out. So that being said, chat, keep in mind what we've said. See who stays honest. Let's look at the back lines. And I've got pretty little pictures of everyone.
Oh, look at this. Look at this.
That's Lekdog with the Sunnies.
No mustache, sunnies, 100 beers deep at the races.
It's a Blues Brothers vibe, mate. I love it.
Tell you, it looks like we could be the replacement for the Rat Pack in Ocean's 11, the remake.
Ian and I have come out from the same Peter Jackson store, I think.
Oh, yeah, mate.
How's that selection committee? Oh,
tell you what.
Weeks, I'll tell you what.
Tell you what, there's some class there. Tell you. There's some class there. But obviously, what we've got here is we've got everyone's backline. So you guys in the chat, everyone's going to get a chance to make their explanations of what it is. So I want you guys to drop a name of whose backline you like. So for those who are confused at home, if they can't see the pictures, Paolo, you went Newman, Jacob Wheatering, Brodie Kemp, Lockie Cowan, Sam Durden, and because you're Italian, you had to drop him in, didn't you? Alex Cincotta. So talk to me why these six.
Well, this was the whole like make a big statement scenario, if that makes sense. And I don't think we have we ever seen anything like that at Carlton in the last 10 to 15 years, where you've seen two or three blokes come out of the side and you're just going like, oh, wow, hold on, that's a bit of a statement. I took Lewis Young out of the team because I know Sam Durden in the preseason, well, not the mail, but the news was, and the truth was that he was actually ahead of Lewis Young in the squad, and then they sort of made the decision late to go with Lewis Young, and I thought he was. Look, there are non-negotiables in AFL as a defender, right? Getting out-muscled and outdone in numerous one-on-one contests is just, for me, that's just, honestly, the amount of times I saw Young get out-muscled and outdone in one-on-one contests, they were droppable offences in my eye. It didn't set a standard with his strength, didn't set a standard with his ability to come off an intercept mark, couldn't lock down his man. And, it wasn't just one man in the back line, but I thought he was poor on the night. And I think it has to be one of Wiedering or Young, seriously, to make a statement. It has to be one of the two. And they're not going to go with Wiedering. So I'd be bringing in Durden. And the Cincotta move is based on Adam Sard potentially not being there. That's why. But I think we've heard, from today, from what the rumour mill is saying, that he might be okay for Sunday. But that's purely based on the fact that that Sardi might not be there.
Hey, Paolo, people asking in the comments if Durden is injured, Sam Durden, but he was dominant on the weekend. What do you have? Something like 26 disposals, 18 marks or 16 marks or something? Yeah.
He didn't play against an amazing forward, but still, I don't think that's the case. You've still got to go out there and do the job. I thought he was really good on the weekend as well. And Kemp coming in, I think it's more a situation of that sort of 3 to 4 rotation of Sard, McGovern, and Young and Cowan. So those 4 players, I think that there's all potential for them to sort of switch and swap. Obviously, the 2 that are based on form are Young and Cowan. I think maybe he might need a little bit of a stint in the seconds. But I think there is definitely scope to bring in 2 of those 4 that I've mentioned there. Kemp, Cincotta, Durden, and then one of McGovern or Sard if they're both fit.
I like the Sam Durden call, to be honest. I flirted with it. And to let you guys know at home, we'll cover the 22 at the end. You'll see what everyone's 22. But I can reveal only me and Paolo picked Durden in our team anywhere. There's a few players that are strays. And it's going to be interesting. When you see it all up in person, you'll actually see how they all come together. So I'll go to Ian this time because I always go to Lekdog. Give me your backline. You've gone Newman, Wiedering, Young, Cowan, McGovern, and Sard. So you've gone not much changed really, did it?
Yeah, maybe vanilla, very simple, kept it very simple. I think for me, I definitely understand Paolo's thoughts there. I think that the keys in particular maybe haven't been 100% at the moment, but I think the backline for probably the most part of the rest of the season have been one of our best, and consistency from them, I'm not looking to change it that much. You'll see when you get to my bench, I guess, the extra player I'm bringing in for that rotation, but I think as far as the smalls that are there that are named, they're our best that we've currently got available, fit and ready to go. And then, I've just kind of kept it simple with the defenders. I don't want to go too early, maybe getting one of them out, but I do like the big statement call. And I think that if we're looking at mentality wise, that's potentially a really good way to go, to just actually say, boys, if you actually want to play in this team, here you go. Look at who we've just dropped. But I probably don't have the balls to do that just yet. So I think I'm going for these 3 tools, because at their best this season, I think they've been incredible for us.
I agree with you. And I mean, onto my team, we'll finish with Lekdog. I went Kemp was my only change. Kemp for Plowman. My thought was, even if McGovern's fit for this game, if he's already had a soft tissue, give him another week. Kemp's got the runs on the board, in my opinion, the last 3 games for his intercept work, to say, you know what, have a pop, because I would be reluctant to play McGovern and him get injured again without us knowing if Kemp can do it. And I think this is the perfect game where transition has hurt St Kilda. I want to see it. And I think that, for me, last week, the midfield was the issue. That was leaving the back line to dry. The other guy that I've dropped is Cowan, and I'm surprised because I'm Cowan's #1 fan. My thought there is long-term. Cowan getting 9-10 touches, playing a lockdown role when it's not his game. We've seen what's happened in the past when Carltons deploy these players like Liam Stocker, the opposite of what they're drafted for, and eventually they lose their natural instinct. I would be happy to give him 2 or 3 weeks in the VFL while Kemp's there because he's done well, and say, Kemp, you have a run, Cowan go back, get 30, 25 touches, enjoy yourself off the half-back line, keep yourself sharp. And aside from that, I've gone like for like, and maybe I feel like I'm the alien here. I like Chera half-back. I think the ball use of him keeping there, the ball use is important. And I think if the midfield protected him, I've got two people here in Sardi and Adam who can maybe alleviate Kemp's loose kicks sometimes, that these two can get the ball out and Kemp's just there to intercept and handball away like Callum Wilkie. So that was my thought process of my backline.
I'll jump in there, Pom. I do like Cherry in that sort of Sam Doherty role, but I'm probably not going to start him there. My backline's pretty straightforward. I tried not to make wholesale changes in just one part of the ground. So out goes Plowman, in comes Gavin. I'm assuming Sard, Gavin, and Pitternet are healthy for the sake of this selection process, just for those at home. So Gov comes in for Plowman in my defence. I do have Brody Kemp. You'll see it later on the extended interchange to come into that McGovern role if he doesn't play, potentially come into the team even if he does play. And then another defender that I've seen named here who I do have in my extended interchange is Alex Chincotta. Have I said it right, Paolo?
Yep,
Chincotta.
Correct. DH, it's a ch. The CI is a ch. Yep.
Chincotta, who I think can be part of that rotation as well. So I'm pretty bullish. I don't think they'll drop Lewis Young, but I looked at I love Sam Durden. I'm big on him. This isn't a fantasy show, but I took him as like a mid-season draft pick when he got picked up last year. I'm all in on him. I want him to play. But no, I think there won't be too much change in defence, assuming everyone's healthy. So Gov for player for me.
I'm like Lekdog as well. I think also Chincotta is on everyone's team. So spoiler, Chincotta is everywhere. Yeah. I mean, for me, just to answer a few questions, seen a few Chera hate. I'm a big fan of Chera halfback. Like, people forget Fremantle. I think if people remember me and Lekdog were, and so was Paolo, we were anti-Chera at the time.
Yes, very anti-Chera.
For me, a lot of those tweets haven't aged well for some people. That's all I'll say. I've got the receipts.
For me, he's better in space. And for me, I've liked him when he's been down there. I thought he was brilliant last week. Before Adelaide, when he was there, I was surprised Kennedy took his spot off halfback. I don't know if that's if that was fitness related. I don't know what it was, but I think if that's going to be his rotation to get everyone into the team, I think it's a perfect place to start him because he's the closest we've got to Zach Williams, who he can
absolutely do it. He can do it. The issue is you probably shouldn't have paid a first and a third or whatever it was for someone to do that. But yes, I agree he can be part of that rotation for sure, Pommy.
Yeah, and I think I went a bit hard, early on about that halfback. And I'm fine with him playing there. I think my issue with probably last week was that we didn't add someone else into that rotation and we were having to play a midfielder in that role a bit too much. That's why I brought in Chincotta this week, that if you need him to split like he was with Doc, I'm happy with that. I just don't want us taking away those outside users from our midfield because that's clearly just a big issue and deficiency from that Adelaide game. But I do like him there because he does use the ball very well, which we do need coming out of defence right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've all seen our backlines. Let's move on to the bread and butter, and then I will do a recap where you can vote, ladies and gentlemen. But here is the midfield, and we'll start where we finished last time with Lekdog. Lekdog, you went, well, this is a fairly no-brainer. Everyone's got the first centre line, which turns me on. We've got Akers, Cripps, and Hollands, which we all did. Maybe we're boring. But your followers, some slight editations here. You can see we've split the room. You've gone Pitternet, Hewitt, and Walsh. Talk to me.
I think we're all going to have the same mix of guys. A couple will be on the interchange. A couple will be in the midfield. So I don't think I don't think I'm doing anything crazy here. I want Pito, assuming he's fit and can see, because he got that eye injury. I want him being the starting ruckman to do that bit of that bully, and I want TDK to be the more part-time ruckman to come over the top. They've got Rowan Marshall, who's playing very well. I want Pito to beat him up a little bit, and then I want TDK to be the cream on top later on. So I've got him in a different position, obviously. Hewitt, he's playing, so you got to assume he's fit, but he still doesn't look like he necessarily should be playing. He was thrown all over the ground a fair bit on the weekend, and he looked slow, which is disappointing. So I think just put him right in the coal face, let him do his thing, and feed it out to a Sam Walsh, because we got beaten badly around the ball. I think they're two guys, along with Cripps, that are really hungry, and in perfect conditions on Sunday, they should be really stamping on the St Kilda midfield and really bullying them into submission. So that's what I'm hoping for. I'm going for a big starting midfield with guys that can rotate through in other positions.
Mate, I like it. I mean, I'm looking, and I like this because I'm just after you in reverse order. I didn't pick Hewitt at all in my team, and I feel like a bit of an idiot because I'm the only one who's got him. But if you go bottom right, you'll notice Paddy Dow. So I feel like
he's in. Sound the alarm, the Dow alarm. First time,
mate,
first mention. Here we go.
And I've come full circle because somehow I'm defending the man I've criticised. Tell you what, what's that saying in Batman? If you live long enough, you live long enough to see yourself become the enemy. Here's my
Tom,
turn.
at the start, I alluded to the fact that there's some decisions I don't think the club will make, which influence my decisions, and that was one of them. Because you look at his numbers and you watch the replays of the VFL, or live, if you watch it live, like I'm sure you guys all do. He's been all right. But I just don't think they're going to play him. I just don't think they're going to play him.
Well, back to my
essentially delisted him in my head.
Well, I think back to my original statement, you can't play half-fit players.
Yes, which Hewitt seems to be.
No way on God's green earth George Hewitt's fit. No way that hand's not affecting him. If it's not affecting him physically, it's affecting him mentally. His numbers are way down, and you only got to watch him play. And I thought long and hard about this one. And I watched him at the weekend, was clean on the ground. That was a big concern the last 2 weeks. We're so fumbly. If he can't handball it, he's getting the kick. This time last week, when I watched him, incredibly hard running backwards as well. I've noticed the last 2 weeks, his defense has been really impeccable, and it's something that I can see. I'll give him credit. Since round one in the VFL, that's something he's putting his heart into as well. He's starting to track back and get the tackle numbers up. I figured, you know what? They look one-dimensional, one-paced and flat-footed. Let's mix it up. Give Kennedy his old job back that he enjoys doing, being that ball getter. Cripps going back to the way he is. And now we've got some actual wingers. Say to Dow, tell you what, you've got your little 1-2s here now. And do you know what I mean? I think for me, I want to see something change in that midfield. You can't go from top 3 to bottom 2 and keep saying pick the same midfielders, in my opinion. You have to change it up. And maybe Paddy Dow, this is his last chance. Give him 2 games and say, off you go, kid. See what you're about. Hate me.
I like it.
Yeah.
Hashtag the time is Dow.
And Paolo, you went with the big names.
Yep. I went with a lineup that doesn't replicate 5 versions of Casper the Ghost like they did last weekend. So I went with the regular names in there, but on the proviso that I would actually like to see Hollands play that sweeper around the back of the stoppage roll, if that makes sense, like we saw Walsh do on numerous occasions last season as well. That horseshoe around the back of the stoppage, if they're able to do that. But I'm happy to back the midfield in again. But the only change I would make is potentially resting Hewitt. That would be the one that I think you and I were discussing, Pommy, and I think that's probably the one that could change. He's probably the one fella that could come out. But I would also consider, they'd have to probably drop. I mean, Ed Curnow has to come out of the team. If he's not playing midfield, he can't play. Sorry, I don't want to see him at half forward. I don't want to see him in the forward pocket. I don't want to see him roaming across half back. I don't want to see him in any of those positions. So for mine, I think 2 have to make way. And one of those might be Kennedy and one of them might be Curnow. So it probably does leave the door open for Dow to come in.
I'm with you, Paolo and Ed.
Yeah.
I don't want him there, in case someone gets off the leash and they need to be tagged. Like, everyone should be applying defensive pressure. It shouldn't be up to one guy break glass and hope he tags someone out of the game. Like, we should be winning it of our own.
You know how you tag someone out the game, Lekdog?
Win the
ball first. Win the ball first and control possession, which we didn't do last week at all.
We barely had a possession, mate. So
it's a modern game. Like, how many teams are doing lockdown roles still? Seriously, we're past that. We should be past that, and like 100%, Paolo. Like, we should be backing in that what we do and who we have out there is going to beat you regardless, because that's what the best teams do. And as soon as you do that, you're saying that we're not better, we can't do it, so we're going to bring someone in to try and stop what you're doing. And maybe that's half the reason that we have been struggling in the midfield, because we've gone with that attitude. I don't know, just little margins.
Well, it's funny. It's the midfield that we saw, I say dominate, but get on top of opposition for a lot of last season. If at the very worst they would break even, it's the same. It's the same blokes running around there. It's nothing's changed. Nothing has changed. I think the thing that's changed, and Pommy alluded to this in his review, is it's between the ears.
Yeah.
You know what's a great example of what you guys are saying, and I think people have forgot because it's so long ago. 2019 Brisbane's midfield at the point we beat them under Teague there was two articles, one by my mate David King, who I like to have a pot shot at, and he said that it was the most diverse and attacking midfield in the league, and one that teams might not be able to stop with the acquisition of Lockie Neal. And do you remember what happened? Mr. Cripps had 40 that day and took the piss. And you saw their midfield crumble because he did so much. And that, I'm with you. That's newsflash for people just to get you back on my side. I haven't got Ed Kerno in here because I don't believe in playing defensive. And that was why I brought Dow in before we finish with Ian on this segment. I brought Dow in because I'm like, if the five midfielders I've got, Chera rotating through here, if they can't do enough impact, so he's the icing on the cake, well, the four midfielders before Dow are fucked. Do you know what I mean? Like, if we're talking about Dow doing defensive running when I'm playing Matt Kennedy and Patrick Cripps, two bulls, well, if we're relying on him to make 7 tackles a game, might as well wrap shop up and become fucking North 4 years ago. Might as well do that. Ian, cheer me up. So you brought Chesney in. Do you know what I mean? You brought Chesney in.
There's a little bit going on there. So, look, I will say, firstly, Pitt is in the team. The only reason he was on my bench was because of the potential injury. So, it was kind of there in case I needed to make a late change. But you could have him. You could have De Koning. I don't really care. You've got both of them in there. And then, Kennedy, for all the reasons everyone has said. I have taken Hewitt out of the team. I just think at the moment, obviously, with that potential injury, and it's either he's got the injury and, okay, rest him, let him heal up. Or if he's fully healthy, then he's playing awfully at the moment. Like, his form isn't there. And so, Chera's in there. Obviously, Walsh will be in the team as well. And look, I have to sneak in a man on my bench because if I've taken out Ed Kerno, if I've taken out George Hewitt, I need to bring in someone else. And I've gone with you, Pommy. Dow is in my team. So it'll make a nice bit of a debate here. I'm on your side. And I think the reasons were, it's trying to reward that VFL form because he has been playing good footy. And I understand that he doesn't necessarily have that defensive running, which is the big, I guess, kind of question mark on him. And if you're trying to replace and fix what happened last week, is he the right guy to do it? But like, Hewitt's not doing that right now either for whatever he's doing. He can't tackle. He's struggling that way. So I don't know if you can get much worse by putting Dow in there. And I kind of agree with everything Pom sort of said there and the sentiment around this midfield hasn't been good this season. It wasn't good for a lot of the back half of last year as well, if we're going to be brutally honest. And I feel like something needs to change. And if we're going to give Hewitt some time off and you need an extra rotation in there, what's 2 weeks of Dow to give him one last opportunity, fight for his career? And I just don't think that the output is that much worse than what we're currently getting from a George Hewitt or an Ed Kerno in that role. So that's kind of why I've gone for that mix. But plenty of rotations as we'll get to other elements on that outside as well.
Yeah, And I think when you see my interchange bench, I've covered it. And to answer this question, because this is the question I prepared for, so Matty, good friend of the channel, I've prepared for this. You got to remember, though, these 63 games we judge him on, it was David Teague and Bolton who, do you know what I mean? They couldn't coach a bus. Do you know what I mean? And a coach is just a big fucking brother of a bus. Do you know what I mean? You haven't seen him in a proper defensive setup. So for me, what I want to see is proper defensive setup. But when people are saying he doesn't tackle, did people watch it? Like, as a selector at the moment, none of these bastards here could lay a tackle. You know what I mean? None of these bastards could win the ball back. So why am I giving them another week on history? Why don't I give someone a chance and a new history? Because you know what? You perform like you did against Adelaide. For me, you're lucky I've only dropped 4 of you, is my question to him. I wanted to
I'm not necessarily and I'm not even like expecting Dow, because I think some people think this when you say you're bringing him in and giving him an opportunity. I'm not expecting Dow to come in and be an absolute superstar, and now he's nailed on our best 22 for the rest of the season. He signs a 5-year contract extension. Like, I'm not expecting him to come in and be absolutely unbelievable. But right now, the midfield we have has not been performing unbelievably, and I just think that there needs to be some sort of change to it. And in my head, I feel like that is rewarding form in the twos that's going to help other guys in there think that, okay, if this guy's playing this well every single game he's in there, then, okay, they're rewarding what he's able to do. And, yeah, just a different mix for once. But I'm keen to hear why you guys haven't selected Dow and getting that kind of debate going, because there's obviously two sides to it, clearly.
Because they're mean.
Because I don't think the club's going to do it. I had him at one stage on my extended interchange, and I swapped him out. I was just like, what's the point of even? Yeah. What's the point of even putting him there?
My concern is that when he comes up to AFL level, he can't deal with the pressure of it. And we saw it last season. Not to scapegoat him in that Brisbane game, but that was a game where he came in, the pressure was on. It's like, guys, you need to get a win, come into the team. And he had a great base. He had 13, 14, 15 weeks of really solid VFL form into that Brisbane game and didn't give a yelp. And my concern is that I don't see him doing anything like he does at VFL level, at AFL level.
Some players don't.
So
some players. Nick Graham was the Gary Ablett of the VFL when he was on our list.
I don't. He comes into the team and there's no look, man. I want him to succeed more than anyone. Do I trust him as a player on the field? I have my doubts.
My counter to that, though, making a case for Dow. Now, I'm not saying he's a world beater. Now, do I think he's going to come in and have 42 touches and change the game? No. But, and this is so important, Carlton every year, last year when people say injuries fucked us, go back and read the injury reports of how many tests that these players ended up 12 weeks later when finals was on the line, actually being out for the year. Now, what I'm saying to you is 2 weeks of Dow to make sure Hewitt's hand's right. 2 weeks. He is a squad player. Why play Hewitt when he's blatantly not right? And if he's not right, he's out of form. And if he can play a full game, get him in the VFL, going back to basics, because at the moment he's lost it. But whatever it takes to get him in the right shape of mind. And you know what? I remember a while ago, right, people saying, oh, Kerno's cooked. I remember this conversation, people saying I was mental. And he found the form. At the end of the day, it's 2 weeks, and I don't think anyone should be playing in this team that potentially could cost us a tilt at the finals. And that's what worries me. There's too many injured players in this team.
I like replacing somewhat like for like, and if I've taken out 2 of them, because I think that there's maybe 1 too many of those more inside trying to win the ball first players, who's playing that go in and win it and handball it out role that Hewitt does in the twos. It's Paddy Dow. So that's again why I think I'm similar to you, Pom, where I'm taking too much out of that midfield if I'm taking 2 players. So someone's got to come in.
I also think it's a statement. Do you know what I mean? That for me, I also think it's a statement. The midfield hasn't performed. And how many games do you want to give this midfield? It's 5 games. and it's 18th for most of its stats. So for me, as a selector, not what the club will do, I'm just thinking 5 weeks of mediocrity. What the fuck am I rewarding? And when people say they've got credits in the bank, they finished 9th. Like, if that's credits in the bank for being average, fuck me. Are we an elite sporting club or are we a social club?
You just answered it yourself, Pommy.
That being said, right, I'll get down in this fucking 22. You watch me. Tell you what, Paddy, if you're watching, mate, I've changed. I'm Team Dow for this week. We've got the forwards, so we'll go through it, and we'll start with who shall I pick on? We'll start with Ian. Ian, we've kind of copied ourselves here. I'm interested to see your thoughts on this. High half forward, you've gone Walsh. Talk to me, and I hope it's the same reasons I've got in there.
Yeah, well, I think looking at the midfield, looking at what was wrong, it's pace around the ball and it's burst away from that. And I think that half forwards have clearly been an issue. Silvani and Fisher haven't been up to it, and the other smalls pushing up around the ground, we haven't been able to do it. And obviously, we have to win the ball first, and I think that that's been half the issue, that the half forwards aren't going to flourish in the way that we've currently been playing football, because we're not winning the ball and we're not winning it and giving it to someone in space. And it's obviously a bit of their positioning and whatnot. It's a bit of both. But looking at it, I've tried to bring Walsh in as a classy user, as someone to try and bring him up to the contest as someone that can burst away. That's why I've kind of brought him into that role. And there's a few I kind of want to rotate through that half forward position in it. Like I'll say earlier, I bought a Bins in as well to help with some rotations, and he's someone that I want kind of on that wing half forward as another speed burst player to get the ball on the outside. And then probably the controversial one on the other side at the moment is a Zach Fisher, who I've kept in, and I'll be the first person to say that he was probably the last person named in my team, because his form this year has been abysmal, and I'm not necessarily married to keeping him in currently, not at all. The decision really was between him and Silvani and looking at what they could add, and I don't think either have been good. I think Silvani, obviously having to play that second ruck role hurts him, and it hurts the consistency of not getting that half forward time and consistency in that role. The decision was kind of, I'm looking at both, not in great form. What do I want and what does this team lack? And unfortunately, it kind of is that pace and that spread. And if I'm looking at their best, who do I want in that team? It's probably Fisher. It's controversial because he's probably been a lot worse. And even if you think you're getting that, we haven't got it. But if I'm looking at that forward line and on paper, what I think we need, there's no one that kind of maybe replaces that. And so, yeah, I've kind of, I maybe kind of agree with Lekdog, thinking it's a bit too tall as well with the two rucks, the two forwards and Silvani there. So it's kind of made me keep Fisher, but I don't feel confident about it. It doesn't make me feel good. If we had a half decent half forward in this football club, mate, he would not be in that team, but we don't have a lot.
I like you thinking as the only one who has Sam Walsh there, I went JSOS over Fisher. I can't have Fisher in. I think his preseason form was diabolical. And aside from a couple of quarters, I don't do it. I brought him in for his ball use. And I went more midfielders. I think our midfield, whether you're a pro DAO or not, I think our midfield lacks rotation. I think you look centre bouncers and stoppage attendance, we're the lowest in the league for rotations. So I think starting him here, his ball use is miles better than anyone else, and you see it inside 50. Chera and him can pinch hit 40% each time, really stay fresh. I wanted him there, and obviously we've all got the same full forward line. I think that's a no-brainer, but I went JSOS because I've got the hit-up mark, and then I've got 5 players to float this high half forward, including Kennedy and players like that. And I've got Bindi on my pine to slot him up high half forward as well. Paolo, I can see you've brought in another surprise. Ooh. Jack Martin, talk to me. The J-Mart appears.
Yeah, he does. Now, this is a very, very, very speculative pick. Very speculative. based on the fact that Fisher's form has been, as we said, very, very poor, very poor. And I think he's a type of player that as much as you might see Fisher's numbers and say, oh, he's had 14, 15, 20, 25 disposals. He's had no impact on the game at all. So I think that's where Jack Martin, I think, might hold an ace up his sleeve over a guy like Zach Fisher. So that was the reason behind the selection. It's not an absolute get him in the team, he needs to play. But it wouldn't surprise me if they were, and it'd be very Carlton-esque of them to throw him into the mix after missing 3 weeks of football, just getting him into the team, which we kind of saw in round one, I think this season, before he went out with that perpetual calf strain, which he's had for God knows how long. But I think from my perspective, I do agree with you guys on the fact that I'd love to see some midfielders rotating through that high half forward role to ensure that we've got more rotations on the ball, which has been, as you said, Pommy, it's been a bugbear of ours for a while now, I think.
What would you guys in chat think? I see this a lot with Jack Martin when he's played the VFL, and it pisses me off we don't see it in seniors. But watching the VFL this week, Fogarty, Carroll, Binns all floated on the ball, particularly around stoppages. Massive rotation. Jack Martin, every time I see him play VFL when he's played there, he goes on the ball for about 20 minutes. It's basically what Zach Fisher does when Carlton are playing well. Why does this not happen in the seniors? Why is the VFL so that? And would you, if you were picking this team, because you are a selector, it's not what the club would do, it's what we would do as selectors. Would Jack be getting 10, 15 minutes should he play?
I thought that's why we got him to the club.
Yeah.
Like that was the selling point. Yeah. And he looked good when he did it. He's I think that's when I think in the same way that Zach Fisher, when he plays his best footy, is rotating through the midfield. That's what Jack Martin should do. It only has to be a few centre bounces. When the opposition kicks a goal or kicks a couple of goals, chuck him in for a bit of pace, see what happens. I'm all for that. And he's a lot bigger than you think. People think of him as this like kind of small forward. He's a big marking, half forward who can be another body in this. I'm absolutely with you. I don't have him in my team because I assume that his legs don't work right now. But if he's selected, I just have never understood why we limit him to being in the forward line and then we put him on the bench or we sub him out. Like, just at least give him some run.
My only counter to Paolo with Jack Martin is I'd be very concerned not giving him the best chance for survival. So maybe I've gone I've gone a little bit crazy, but I'm a firm believer on 100% or don't bother. It's not the last 6 round.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So I'd like him to have 4 weeks in the VFL and say, tell you what, you play 95% for 4 weeks, then I'll let you into this side. For me, I think he needs to prove it because otherwise I'd rather, I know you're the only one to pick Josh Honey. I'm not picking on you, Lekdog, but I'd rather give him 4 weeks if that's the case because I feel like at least he's fit and available. Where Jack Martin, for me, he has to prove it a little bit.
I think there's a spot for Jack Martin in this team if he can get certain things right. But I kind of agree. He needs a couple of weeks in the VFL just so I can see that his calves do currently exist and they're not too tight, hopefully. Well, but I get why you got him in.
Well, everyone's talked about their extended bench and it'll give you it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double this up with the 22. So we'll start with Paolo. This was Paolo's full team, and this is his interchange bench. So, obviously, on Paolo's interchange bench, he's gone Sardi, McGovern, which I'm guessing, obviously, due to potential injuries. TDK, Binsey, Young, Hewitt, Fisher, and a Dowser. Love to see it.
He's like right at the end.
Smack him in.
He's there, so Pom doesn't kick off.
Slotted him in.
So talk to me about the makeup of this list. It looks really strong on paper, I've got to say.
Yeah, I think it's more along the lines, I think, of that 22 that I've put out on the park there is more just, I put that out there just to show, I wanted to show you and everyone the options that we potentially have if they go sort of one way or the other, if that makes sense. So I think in I think if we look back towards or when we look forward into this year, I think you'll see those guys definitely get a chance this season just based on what they've shown at VFL form. But for mine, like if I was actually going for a final starting 22, if that made sense, provided that all the injuries that we saw from last week are all alleviated, everyone is fit, I would be going with the final squad of Newman, Wiedering, Sard, McGovern, Durden, Chera across half back. Akers, Cripps. Yep. Akers, Cripps, Hollands. Silvani, Harry, Martin / Fisher / Binns. Potentially. That position there, that final half forward role aside Jack Silvani, there are 3 or 4 players that could potentially be named there. They could go with someone who could play just that pure half forward role, or they could go with a midfielder that they rotate through. So that second half forward spot is up for grabs. And that can be rotated through by 3 players. And then the rest of the forward line, I've got Motlop, Charlie, and Durden. I don't think too much should change from the forward line because they had, maybe what are they supposed to do? Really, they kicked 16 goals a week before Adelaide, and then the service was worse than the fucking Three Stooges last week. So, I wouldn't be changing too much in the forward line. And then from an on-ball perspective, I went Pitneck, Kennedy, and Walsh rotating through there. So that's the best case scenario. And then the other change in the midfield that could be made, which I really like, is the management of Hewitt for maybe a Dow or something like that. That's what I'd be going with. And then
converting him.
Yeah. And then interchange. It's an interesting one. TDK, I think, has to be there. I do like the 2 rucks. I think that just has to happen. And we saw TDK last week. He can't ruck on his own, can he? He was deplorable last week. He was shocking.
It's because he's not a number 1 ruckman.
Well, exactly right. So I've got him there. And yeah, as for the rest of the bench, just make it up maybe down, I guess, for Hewitt. Yeah.
Any questions, gentlemen, that when you see that you want to fire at Paolo? I mean, he sensationally dropped Jack Martin. I love it.
No question.
He's up for grabs in that half forward line. That second half forward flank role. That's there are 4 players that could potentially go through there. It could be Fisher. It could be Martin. It could be Binns.
Yeah.
Or it could be Fisher. I don't know. I don't know which way they'll go, but it's a decision that they're going to have to make either way.
Fisher, Jesus, not Jesus.
I know, but the problem is that who is there to cut? It could be Binns. Could be Binns. He's the only one that seems ready.
That's the problem. One of us is probably next in line. Let's be honest in that half forward division. You know what I mean? We'll pick on Lekdog because he's looking there sad. So Lekdog, this was your interchange bench. You had Chesney, Binsey, Kennedy, Chincotta, O'Brien, Kemp, JSOS, and Ed. So talk to me about that's so everyone can see at home. We've done the line by line. You can see now that all come together. What were you thinking with this team? And I mean that in the nicest possible way. That's come across like, what were you thinking?
No. So that interchange is in order of preference. So the first 4 would be in my starting team. The next 4 would be my emergencies. Kemp would be in an emergency in case Gov doesn't get up. So my changes end up being Josh Honey staying in the team, Jack Silvani omitted, Mitch McGovern in for Lockie Plowman, Jackson Binns in for Zach Fisher, and Alex Chincotta in for Ed Curnow. Why am I keeping Honey in the team? Don't really know, to be honest, but being sub for 2 weeks in a row, like shit, I'll get off the pot, give him a game or don't. I don't like them just continuing to play players as sub, and I think we're too tall with Silvani, DeConning, Curnow, and Harry Mackay, particularly at Marvel when Mackay and Curnow push up and mark well anyway. I really want to see Binns get a run. He can float through that half forward line. He can float. He's kind of he can move into the wing a little bit. He can kind of play behind the ball as well. I don't mind him as a little bit of a hole filler. And Chincotta's the same. Give us some pace in defense. So I don't think I've made that many crazy changes. I guess the big one is Silvani out, and which people will disagree with, but I just don't like the team when it's both him, TDK, rotate, like fighting for that one spot. I prefer what TDK offers, to be honest, at the moment. And that's not just off the back of last week. That's off the back of the whole season. And I've been really critical of Tom De Koning as well over the time, but I just think from a structural point of view, he offers us more. So I don't think it's a crazy team. I like having two debutants in Binns and Cincotta come in. I like having Kemp as an emergency there for filling a hole. And as I said earlier, I don't want Ed Curnow in the team with the rest of the mids. So, yeah, I don't think there's anything crazy there.
Any questions, gentlemen?
Not really, no.
Yeah,
Josh Honey's an interesting one. I do like it, though. I like you.
Yeah. I don't know if they will, but I think if he's had 2 quarters of footy or 3 quarters of footy now in the seniors, basically. Let's just see what he can do for a full game, because he's not going to give us less, I don't think, than Zach Fisher has, basically. So let's see what he does for a full game. He's clearly good enough to be in the 23. Let's see what he does.
I like it.
Yeah, I guess like the only other little thing I would just like to get a bit more clarification on is like, do you think that there's enough probably tweaks to the midfield? Obviously, like Hewitt's still in your team and things like that. Obviously, that's been a bit of an issue for us this season. Is there other guys, like who are the other people that you kind of see adding to that rotation to alleviate some of the issues we've had this season?
I actually think it's addition by subtraction, to be honest. So I think when you take Ed Curnow out of the team, take his rotations out and give them to Chera and split them with, I don't know, whoever you want, a Binns or whatever. I don't want Matthew Kennedy getting wasted sitting behind the ball and sitting on the bench. Like, you take Ed out, you're essentially adding Curnow into that spot, adding Kennedy into that spot, in my eyes. So yeah, addition by subtraction. I also think, I just want to see it once more under the roof against another sort of similar midfield. I just want to see it one more time, basically.
Very fair.
Oh, fair enough. Each to his own. I'm not here to judge. Addition by subtraction. You have spent too much time in boardrooms. You have. Absolute nonsense. I love it. And then this is Ian's interchange bench. We haven't seen it, but we see it all come together. He's gone Cincotta. He's gone Dow. Good boy. Binsey, Pitternet, JSOS, Carroll, Ed Curnow, and the very beautiful Brodie Kemp. And talk to us now. We see the 22 plus 6. Players. What it's about.
Very similar to Lekdog in the bench, as far as the first 4 are the guys that would be there. The rest are just going to be the emergencies. Like I know Ed Curnow's there, but like I don't really care too much about the emergencies apart from the sub, and if there is an injury, having someone that can come in, because that was my gripe last week with Plowman coming in for McGovern. I just thought, like, why is it not Kemp? If you think that there's a bit of a niggle there and there's any risk for a player coming out, make it a bit more like for like. So yeah, my main changes this week have been Hewitt out, Dow in to cover that position, Plowman out, Gov back in, Ed Curnow out, Binns in for some run and rotation, Honey out, and Cincotta to fix up the defensive issues I had. And unfortunately, Silvani comes out, and he's sort of the sub for me. I liked him as the sub against, I think it was Adelaide last year. Comes on, fiery, ends up being one of our better players. I think that he can add something to that forward of the ball. But honestly, after this whole discussion, like, there's still one player I've got in my team that kind of makes me want to throw up a little bit every time I sort of see him there. Unfortunately, Fish. So I'm kind of happy to, on the fly, omit Fish and bring back in Silvani, because I'm kind of convinced with having that other half forward be that Walsh, have it be Binns, have it a few other players, and Chera kind of rotating through that half forward, doing that C-shape run around the contest. I think we maybe do lack a bit more of that lead-up stretcher, and maybe that is Silvani. So I'm happy to concede there and bring him in. And yeah, I want rotations around the ball, and that's where I'm thinking the addition of Binns allows you to do a little bit more as well, because he can occupy that wing role. He's played that attacking spot there. And does a Hollands get a go for a centre bounce or two? You can throw Akers in if you need to change something up. And whether they do it or not, I just think it gives you a bit of flexibility in there with that team. But yeah, that's kind of why I've gone for that squad. And yeah, Cincotta as well into that defense. We need the run. We need the carry. And at the moment, if you're going to play Cowan as a bit more of a lockdown, I think you get it heaps with Cincotta. So yeah, that's kind of it. Pick it apart, boys.
I like it. No, I like it. I like your reasoning. Like, for me, it makes sense. I'm anti-Fisher. I feel like it feels like for me there has to be a statement. And Fisher, you always forget. I think sometimes when we're doing these teams that these guys are 25, 26 years old. You know what I mean? Like, some of these guys have won flags by now. So, like, I'm not forgiving these guys second, third chances. Where I'd probably give Hollands a chance if he had a Fisher couple of games. Do you know what I mean? And say he's adapting. This guy should be bang ready today.
It's 100 games and we still don't know if he's best 22 or what he is or what his role is. And we're hopeful that when other things click, he clicks. But I don't know if you can do that anymore if we're wanting to be a finals team. Yeah. So I do agree with you. That's why I think on the fly he's out.
Had this conversation during the week with someone who's probably not as, invested in the numbers and stuff as us. And, I can't believe Fisher's only played 100 games. Well, that's a lot of games. And also he's been on the list. He's almost eligible for free agency. Like, that's how long he's been on the list. So he hasn't done it. So,
if not now, when? That's the question. When? That's the question with all of them, isn't it?
He should be at his peak right now. 25-year-old. Right. Over 100 games in, is a restricted free agent at the end of, I think it's next year or the year after, whenever it is. Like, he should be commanding a huge salary, and he should be one we should be fighting to keep in at this point. And it's just, he's good when he's good when we're good, but he's not the reason we're good, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That's a good point. Just before we move away from these ones, Pommy, the one fella that I found interesting that not dropped, but that we haven't rotated, I think needs. I think Cowan in for Kemp really needs to be considered. I think that's a big one for mine.
What do you mean?
I think that will happen. I didn't have it happening this week. Well, but I think they will definitely rest Cowan.
Well, we haven't seen my team. I rested Cowan.
Okay.
So
there we go.
I'm Team Cowan. I am number one ticket holder of the Cowan fan club. I feel like playing him in that lockdown role, I'm starting to think, get him in there, get him in the VFL and do what Chincotta, do what Plowman's doing, enjoy the ball and work enjoying the game because it's a very rigid role and Cowan's got it. But you can see my interchange bench. What I did here is Chincotta. The first guy here is the question mark, right? The first guy here is the question mark. I've put him there because if he is fit and he can prove it to me, he plays. But and we've got a bit of adaptability because then I've got the extra defender. We can give Cherra a hell of a lot more midfield time. But Chincotta comes in. Chincotta for me is first emergency as well. If Sard is not 100% right, I want him at half back, but it gives me that option to float. And you can see I've got a lot of midfielders here. Gone Binsey. Feel like Bins has to play. And because I'm playing Walsh half forward as part of the on-ball rotation, I've got an extra winger so we can float these guys through. People forget Ollie Hollands has played on the ball and high half forward. Binsey does the same. So for me, that's a really important thing. I want a lot of rotation. I feel that's where we get that run and stun from, a little bit of difference when the shit hits the fan as opposed to staying. And then my last four were backups. So Sam Durden was an option. I did really think about strongly giving Wheater in the intercept job, going back to what he did at early doors when he was all Australian numbers and letting him be the third and giving Durden the lockdown role instead of Wheater in. But for me, give him another week. Jack Carroll, option at high half forward as well. If Sad lets me down, Chincotta straight into there. He's the first name there. And Fogarty, people forget talking about him. What Dow lacks in tackling in the VFL, this guy is his tackles. This guy is his defence. This guy is his backstop, like Kennedy and Cripps are for our midfield. Option there for Carlton if they want to go a tagging role, but not a tagging role. And I've left Ed Kerner where he belongs in the VFL to break in case Carlton need to play a tagging role. And Lockie O'Brien, just because I needed to have numbers. To be honest, I'd run out at this point. And I was like, fuck, I've got to put two people in. And that was it. So, I mean, that for me is my makeup. So over to you guys to criticize it.
I don't think there's anything outlandishly worth calling out. My shout out around Cowan, which you've obviously omitted, Pom, is that they travel to Perth next week to play the Eagles. I think that's when we'll see a few boys left behind, because the Eagles are playing not even a waffle side at the moment. So I think they'll try not to mess with too much stuff this week. Try and scrape a win against St Kilda, and then leave a few boys home when they go to Perth, and then we'll probably get smashed by the winless Eagles. It'll be fun.
No, that's what I that's why I kept Cowan in the team, because I mean we've already had so much, I guess, disruption as far as outs into this back line, with obviously McGovern out and then Doherty as well, and I just thought that with Chincotta coming into it and the other changes I was making, that I was starting to make quite a few, and maybe that's what we need. Maybe we need that big selection change, but yeah, I just thought if we're getting rid of Cowan as well for Kemp, who is a fine change, like I don't have a necessary issue with it. I kind of agree with Lekdog, where probably maybe for next week, where like if we make too many changes, and I maybe want to get your opinion on this, like do you think that affects how we will be playing in the consistency of the chemistry down in that back line if we keep making a broad change, or do you think that just isn't an issue?
No, I'm with you. I try to limit the amount of changes we make. Obviously, there's a balance between making statements, as Paolo talked about. There's also a balance about consistency, and it's not fantasy footy. You can't make 8 changes every week. It's real life. You've actually got to balance it. So yeah, I'm with you.
That's why I dropped Fisher. I felt one of Fisher, J Sauce, one of them players has been there nearly every fucking game these boys have played. So as a coach, if you can delete one, it might just send some shockwaves through that group of he's always played. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And it's not damaging the equilibrium, because I think that role is open. Cowan, I think now's the time to rest him. I think he's got a couple of easy VFL games. I want to see him there. And do you know what I mean? I think just let him go back into there. Give him Plowman's role in the VFL so he can take the kick-ins, enjoy footy again. And I'd love to be able to do it with Ollie Hollands around the bye as well. Just give Ollie Hollands, just take him out for a couple of weeks and work on his craft. Do you know what I mean? But that's it. Well,
the benefit... Oh, sorry, Pom. I was just going to say, I think the benefit of dropping Cowan to the 2s whenever we do, he's going to average like 35 disposals. Yeah. And I think Carlton fans are going to be like, oh, shit, this guy's legit. Yeah. This guy's not just a dour one-on-one defender. Like, he's going to go back and dominate.
And Kemp's form does deserve a go soon as well. Yeah. Like I've said with bringing Dow in, he's been performing, he's been doing his role, so he definitely deserves a go soon.
And yeah, everyone, be nice to Dow. #Dow.
Had to slip him in there.
But honestly, ladies and gentlemen, we have enjoyed this chat. I hope you enjoyed it. I've seen a lot of comments in the chat. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe. Make sure you go and check these boys out. They're everywhere. That is Carlton, so you see them all. But we'll be back next week. In the comments, go and give us your 22. You've seen our arguments. We've presented our cases, the selection table. We'll be back next week, though, with another selection table. Paolo will be on time this time.
Thank you. I won't get stuck in traffic on the way back from work, on the way back from the studio. So JP is live now, the Jumper Punch. Get on the Blue Broad channel. We are live and ready to rock and roll. So,
go and check them out. Go and annoy them and think about our 22. But we'll be back next week. Much love. Go Blues. And see you next time.
Hooroo.
Gotcha.